She shut down the last brick-and-mortar pharmacies on Chicago's South Side because the metrics promised efficiency and rapid growth. Now, with the neighborhood left without prescription medicine in the middle of a lingering winter, she had to face people and hear their solutions in their own words. Melanie Chang had enough money and connections, but the evening of the public hearing became the point where wealth stopped covering guilt and where the question turned personal. Would she stay and fix what she had broken while there was still time for someone's insulin dose today, not someday? She was born in Chicago into a family that did everything right, saved, worked late, looked after their elders. Her grandmother Evelyn, who had come to the city in the 1970s, lived for decades in the same house with creaking stairs and wind in the cracks, simmered soups in the evenings, and taught her granddaughter to count change. Melanie graduated from college, built an online pharmacy network, and took pride in algorithms that sped up delivery. She trained herself out of sentimentality because the world of basis points and mergers demanded direct decisions. When last November her team proposed closing unprofitable physical locations, she signed the order with one click, added language about a free hotline and extra courier slots, then left on a business trip, convinced that everything was working. Winter dragged on, December slipped into January, the lake wind cut at cheeks, the snow piled into dense gray berms along the curbs, and suddenly it turned out the deliveries were not entering streets where drifts fused with unplowed alleys, and couriers refused to climb slick stairs in buildings without elevators. Diabetics missed doses, asthmatics asked neighbors, and those neighbors called the city and the paper. In February, the Department of Public Health sent a notice. Public hearings scheduled, explanations of policy and timeline for restoring access required. The Pharmacists' Union, which she had considered inflexible, was preparing to speak. Chicago Tribune reporter Marcus Bell requested comment and the purchasing archive. All of it condensed into a day of concrete faces where Grandma Evelyn held a plastic 7-day pill organizer and said simply, "I'll take your oranges, honey, but I need my pills like everyone here, not tomorrow, today." The morning stretched in gray light. She arrived at her grandmother's with a Dunkin' paper cup, and the smell of cheap coffee felt like just punishment for the smooth, sterile negotiations she was used to hiding behind. A Ventra card hung on a hook in the hallway, wool socks were drying on the radiator, and the patchwork quilt on the sofa recalled winters when they watched the forecast together and argued whether the shovel would be needed. She hugged her grandmother, and her grandmother, hugging back, kept her hands on Melanie's back a little longer than usual, and said calmly but firmly, "You give back what you took, Melanie, not the money, the pharmacies." Derek was already at the door and looked like people with families who choose shifts and schedules over presentations, tired and honest. "You decided to show up," he said, and the word "show up" sounded like an accusation. "I came to explain that today there will be a plan," she said. "A plan?" he asked. "While people stood in a delivery queue all night? You shut Reading on 75th, and Tracy's mom now has to cross half the city for an inhaler. That's not a plan. That's a betrayal of the neighborhood." She tried to argue that the hotline was taking requests and that home visits were coming, but she heard how her own phrase sounded, canned, hollow, humiliating. A dull, heavy wave of shame rose inside her, and behind it, the fear that she no longer controlled what she had destroyed. Why had she thought efficiency could replace proximity? Why had she let spreadsheets say, "Do it," on her behalf? "I hear you," she said out loud. "Too late to hear," Derek said. He grabbed his jacket and went down the creaking stairs, as if each sound of the steps confirmed the verdict. She stayed at the door with the sense that conversations inside the family would be just as hard as the official ones, and realized, without here-and-now examples, her words would run dry. She tried to assemble a concrete package of measures before the hearing, but ran into resistance from her own people. In a conference room floating in the cloud, little squares held the head of procurement, the lawyer, and the PR director. "We can announce a mobile station pilot, but we'll need the licensing committee's approval," the lawyer said. "And insurers don't like free programs without formalities," the procurement chief added. The PR director, in her usual even tone, proposed a video with people and snow that would signal care. "No videos," Melanie said, surprised by the irritation in her own voice. "We need to stand on the bus platform tonight and give out what is vital: insulin pens, inhalers, glucose strips, gel, basic antibiotics." "Without a license, you'll be filmed into global disgrace," the lawyer said. "Marcus Bell has already asked for comment." She drew a deep breath. The air was like a server room, familiar and dry, not like a bus stop. Had she built a company where every step was vetted for risk to her, rather than benefit to people? Was she afraid of the law, or of a bad article? "Contact the Department of Public Health," she said, "and request a temporary permit for emergency dispensing. If they refuse, we prepare the station anyway, but staff it with volunteer physicians using their personal licenses." For the first time in many months, she heard not excuses, but directives in her own voice, and understood. Her decisions had to diverge from the usual logic of minimizing harm to herself. Now she was minimizing other people's harm. She went to the neighborhood center where tenants' meetings usually took place to hear unfiltered complaints before the big podium, and there she met a tough and smart opponent. Aisha Haddad, the pharmacists' union leader, stood by a table with a stack of papers. Faces around were tired, hands buried in jacket pockets, paper cups warmed palms. "You here to listen or to fend us off?" Aisha asked, not aggressive, testing. "To listen," Melanie said, "and to say that today we begin fixing things. Every other CEO says that after they get caught shutting down social infrastructure," Aisha noted. A man in a knit cap stood nearby and said quietly, "I missed 2 days of metformin. I'm no hero." Melanie began. "Say it without I," Aisha said. "Say what you'll do for him today, not in 30 days. They spoke for several minutes about botched purchasing, empty shelves, unreal delivery slots. Each detail returned the talk to one point: responsibility. People didn't want to hear "I sympathize." They wanted addresses, hours, numbers. "Today at 7 p.m., the bus platform by the depot, a temporary point, free dispensing," Melanie said. "I'll ensure stock at least for the first hours." "Who's going to dispense? We have pharmacists, not robots," Aisha asked. "You?" Melanie asked. "If there's a permit, I'll bring 2, Aisha said. She felt sharply that without allies among those she had considered opponents, she would not cope, and that a thin sheet of authorization separated intention from a real box of insulin. Then it was time to talk to the city. In the narrow corridor outside the room marked Licensing Committee, a city official looked at her over his glasses. "You want the city to take responsibility for dispensing prescription drugs out of a tent?" he asked. "Out of a sanitary canopy with certified specialists," she clarified. "You do not have an active physical license for this district after closing your own locations." "What we do have is an emergency," she said. "And a journalist who is already writing," he added. "Then we'll have a protocol," she replied. He sighed, made a call, spoke briefly and dryly. "The department is ready to consider a temporary permit if there is a medical director on site, a list of medications, and a storage protocol. That is physically impossible today. Tomorrow." The word tomorrow made her clench her teeth. Tomorrow meant another night without insulin. Could she afford to get it wrong again? "We'll be on the platform today. Even if dispensing starts tomorrow, today there will be consultations, glucose gel for emergencies, and glucometer checks," she said. "That is already a violation," he noted. "That is already life," she answered. She stepped out into the cold air and made a simple decision. She would not beat procedure right now, but she would prepare actions that did not depend on a stamp on paper. She needed to bring her grandmother to the hearing because Evelyn had said herself, "I will say you closed the corner pharmacy where they knew me by name." But family choice became an obstacle. In the hallway, Derek was brushing the mat with a small broom. "I'm not taking her to that circus," he said. "She asked to go," Melanie said. "I'm not security for your relationship with the city," he snapped. "I'm not asking you to be security. I'm asking you to be a grandson," she said. He looked as if the word had lost its weight long ago. "Grandma is older than you and me put together," he said, and turned away. The wool socks still dried on the radiator, the Ventricard still hung on the hook, the kettle was silent on the stove, and the stairs creaked as Grandma came down, slowly but decisively. "I'll go myself," Evelyn said, and after a pause added, "Maybe I could have gone to the pharmacy myself too if it were open." Anxiety rose inside Melanie, mixed with resolve. She did not intend to let her down again, not today. She adopted one more simple rule. The road to the hearing room was not just about the car and traffic. It was an admission that Grandma had the right to speak without filters, and the price of that truth was her own discomfort. In the City Hall foyer, Marcus Bell approached her. There was no microphone aggression, but there was the look of someone who knows how to listen and ask precise questions. "Ms. Chang, I have copies of your internal emails about blocking unproductive shipments to the South Side," he said. "It was an economic measure that turned out to be morally blind," she said. "Do you admit your company created a medication desert?" he asked. "I admit my decisions created it," she replied. "And?" he asked. "And today I begin dismantling the consequences," she said. "This will be on air," he warned. An old fear of public failure rose inside her, but behind it, clarity showed through. Only direct words and direct actions work. How else? How much longer was she going to feed the world transition periods? She walked into the chamber not hiding from cameras, but almost looking for them, because publicity had to hold her to her promises. The licensing committee sat in a semicircle, each with a folder. A representative of the health department listed numbers, delivery delays, percentage of missed prescriptions, complaints. Aisha Haddad stood and said, "We warned you that closing physical locations would hit the most vulnerable. You closed in December, and in January, we saw an increase in emergency calls." "Yes," Melanie said. "Can we hear something more than yes?" a committee member asked. "Tonight we will set up a mobile station on the bus platform," Melanie said, "and we're opening a 24-hour phone line where a live pharmacist will pick up the phone, not a bot. We'll personally sign commitments to restore physical pharmacies within 30 days. Signing is easy. Who will be on site? With what? In what quantities?" they asked. She listed them: insulin pens, 100 sets, inhalers, 50, blood glucose meters, 20, strips, 300, gel, a case. "You are promising right now what you don't have a permit for," the chair noted. "I'm asking you to issue a temporary permit right now," she said. "The procedure provides," he began. "While the procedure provides, people are fainting at bus stops," Aisha said. The tension shifted perceptibly to the edge where declarations no longer sounded and actions were required. And then Grandma Evelyn, carefully holding a handkerchief and papers, stood and walked to the microphone. "I am Evelyn Chang, 73 years old, type 2 diabetes," she said, stumbling over details, because people of her generation spoke that way, without ornament or titles. "My pharmacy was on the corner where they knew me by name, and when it closed, I waited 2 days for delivery because of the snow, because the system is overloaded. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for pills." She rummaged in her papers, mixed them up, looked up, and on her face flickered the foggy confusion familiar to every diabetic, then weakness. She swayed, leaned on the lectern, and the lectern creaked dully like the old stairs at home. "Grandma," Melanie said and rushed forward. Someone shouted, "Ambulance!" Someone was already dialing. The City Hall guard lunged for the first aid kit, but the kit turned out to be standard issue, Bandages, plasters, peroxide. There was no glucose gel. Purchasing is messed up, the second guard muttered, and the word hit like a hammer. Vending sugary soda, Melanie said. Only water and diet cola, came the reply. Find orange juice. Juice, she said. Reporters rose from their seats, flashes clicked, and Grandma blinked at the light. Turn off the flashes, please, Melanie said into the microphone, both in order and care. Lower the cameras, she's losing consciousness. Marcus Bell, without argument, lowered his camera. I'm turning it off. Others followed. The room fell quieter for a second. Ambulance is stuck in traffic. Snowdrifts on Madison, someone called from the door. Who has a glucometer? Aisha asked. Here, a young man responded. A woman from the administration ran in with a foam cup. Sweet tea from the staff room. It smelled like a cheap cafeteria, but right now it was worth more than any PR. Melanie held her grandmother by the shoulders. Breathe, Grandma. The sugar's coming. Now, she said, feeling fear tighten her throat, but resolve push her hands. She took the microphone because everything was going live and decided to speak the way you read a shopping list at home. My name is Melanie Chang, and this is my fault. I closed the South Side's physical pharmacies for efficiency, and today my grandmother, like hundreds of others, is paying for it. The facts are these. Right in front of us, an empty first aid kit, because procurement is broken, the nearest shuttered pharmacy with empty shelves 2 blocks away. Delivery queue times 45 minutes, then try again tomorrow. The ambulance is stuck in a snow jam because it's late winter and the city is behind. I am asking now, security, bring everything sweet from the vending machines and the cafeteria. Administration, check the cupboards for sugar, honey, juice. Reporters, drop the flashes. Committee, issue a temporary permit to distribute glucose gel and inhalers right in this building. She listed specifics: juice, gel, inhalers, strips, pens. I signed this commitment. Today, at 7 p.m., a mobile pharmacy station on the bus platform at the Southside Depot. 3 free pop-up dispensing points for vital medications within the next 48 hours, by the center, by the school, and by St. Mark's Church. Around the clock line where human beings, not bots, pick up will start in 6 hours. I will pay union pharmacists double rate for the first 2 weeks. Reopening physical pharmacies, 3 locations, within 30 days. The leases are agreed. I am signing now, and I will sign under the cameras, because there is a reason not to trust me. I assume not only the cost, but the presence. I will be on the platform, and anyone who did not get their medicine will find me. If I fail to do this, I demand that the committee revoke our licenses across the network. Her voice shook not from theatricality, but from the strain of responsibility. I am staying and I am fixing, she said. She turned to Aisha. Will you stand with me? I will, Aisha replied. She looked at Marcus. You will write your article anyway. Write what we did today, and write again tomorrow if we miss the deadline. I will, he said. People started moving. Someone held the door, letting in cold air. Someone brought foam cups. Orange juice was found. A guard brought another first aid kit, where a little packet of honey from a past staff meeting was rattling around. The glucometer showed numbers that let everyone exhale. The sugar was rising. Grandma held the cup, looked at her granddaughter, and said quietly, so only she could hear, "This is your job, honey, to be here when it doesn't work." The fear receded, replaced by gratitude and firmness. Her speech turned out to be not an art, but an admission with a schedule and addresses, and that was what restored her right to keep speaking. In the evening, the bus depot glowed under yellow lamps. The snow squeaked. The lake wind crawled under collars. 2 tall sanitary tents were set up on the asphalt. Tables were carried out, boxes laid out. From the trunk of Melanie's car, they pulled glucometers and strips. Aisha checked lists. 2 pharmacists put on badges. We'll have the permit tomorrow, Aisha said. Today we have people, Melanie replied. The line wasn't a flourish. It held up to the air and the smell of diesel. Derek walked up to the platform. He stood with his hands shoved in his pockets and looked at the queue forming neatly, the way people line up for the shuttle. "You really came," he said. "I promised," she said. "I don't believe promises," he said. "Then watch actions," she said. There was hardly any arguing, and that was new. A man with a cough came to the tent. A pharmacist spoke with him and handed him an inhaler. A woman in a knit hat brought a prescription for metformin. Melanie explained that today the list was limited, but for everything else, there was a hotline answered by actual people. She handed over a slip with a number. "You can call right now. A person is sitting there." The woman called, and 30 seconds later smiled because she heard yes, not "please wait." Derek seemed to weigh something. "Tomorrow I've got a late shift, but I can swing by and bring more thermoses," he said. "Everyone here is freezing." "Bring them," she said. He nodded. "If you really open the storefronts on time, I'll tell the guys you didn't run and didn't hide behind PR," he added. "Tell them that when you see the key in the lock," she said. A simple thought landed. Bridges inside a family are built with whatever's at hand. A thermos, a promise to come back, showing up on the platform in wind and snow. Night retreated slowly. When they came back to Grandma's, the apartment smelled of oranges. Someone had bought a net bag on the way and put it on the table, a sign that explains nothing and says everything. The kettle on the gas stove was whistling. The whistle was businesslike, not plaintive. The plastic 7-day pill organizer lay open on the table, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and each compartment held pills. Nearby were salty crackers because the doctors had said, "Keep some handy." The patchwork quilt hung peacefully from the sofa. The wool socks on the radiator had dried and looked like little flags on a fortress wall that was not going to surrender again. In the hallway, the Ventra card still hung on the hook, a reminder of a city where people commute to work and back. And that city now knew her name as plainly as the pharmacist at the shuttered corner store once did. Melanie sat across from her grandmother and spoke without ornament, because she was tired of ornament, about signed commitments, about the hotline where a pharmacist was already on shift, about the tents where the wind knocked papers out of hands, about how Derek quietly slid empty crates under the boxes to keep them dry, and how the guy with the cough walked back on foot and said, "Thank you," so loudly, as if afraid he wouldn't be heard. She spoke the way you make a to-do list for tomorrow: keys for the leases, shelf repairs, deliveries of insulin pens under contract, training new staff, documents for the committee. She did not say anything about image repair, because the image had run out where people were collapsing. "I will stay here for a month," she said, "and I'll commute to the office on the north side, but come back here every day. I won't make a show. I'll be in the corner store, on the platform, in the line, in the pharmacy when it opens. And if I slip, you'll be the first to tell me." "I will," Evelyn said, "and then bring more oranges. They're good." "I will," Melanie promised. Inside, a quiet lift rose. Not euphoria, but a steady resolve that rests not on likes and headlines, but on schedules and keys. She cleared the cups, put the crackers on a plate, and set out the pills for tomorrow, because habits create safety. She called Aisha, quickly worked out the shifts. She called Marcus. "If you want, come by at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We'll be unloading." "I'll be there," he said. She dialed Derek. "Thanks for the help." "Don't mention it. Just do what you promised," he said. "I will," she said, and heard her voice stay even, without theater. She sat for another minute in the quiet. The kettle had fallen silent. Grandma was whispering along with the TV, and she asked herself the question she now planned to use to test every decision. Was she doing everything so that tomorrow anyone could find her and ask where, when, who? The answer was simple. The addresses would be on the doors, the people on the line, the lists on the tables. That is how it should be. It did not erase the past. People had still missed doses. Someone had had an attack. Someone had lost a peaceful night. And this winter had already left marks in the statistics. But responsibility turned out not to be a new formulation. It was going back to the cold evening bus platform, pitching a tent and pulling an insulin pen from a box, and then unlocking a pharmacy door in a neighborhood that had stopped trusting her. Wealth without participation really did destroy trust. Participation did not cancel mistakes, but it restored the right to correct them, while there was still someone's evening tea with a whistling kettle, a plastic weekly pill organizer, and an orange that smelled as simply as the life she now owed care for.